I am a man of culture, and I know you may find this hard to believe, but I am very, very familiar with the Galgun series. I own all 3 games in the series, and I've beaten each of them multiple times. In fact, the Galgun games were some of the first fan service style games I'd ever played. In a way, they kinda taught me that it's okay to have a bit of spice in your anime video games that feature fictional characters in a fictional setting. Yes, the games are a bit naughty and very tongue-in-cheek, but does that mean they can't be fun or enjoyable? In my opinion, no, both things can be true at the same time. While I understand that these kind of games won't be to everyone's tastes, I personally love the Galgun series, and I think maybe you could too, if you give them a chance. So let's get this part out of the way right off the bat: censorship. You'll be happy to know that this game has absolutely zero censorship, and it's presented exactly as the developers intended. To be absolutely fair, I should point out that the PS4 and PC version of the game was also not censored in any way, and to this day still isn't. The sad thing is that Sony and PlayStation have recently become the arbiters of decency and the keepers of what's acceptable in video games, but this series started on the PS3. The most recent release, which was called Galgun Returns, is a remake of the PS3 original, but you can't even get the remake on a PlayStation console due to censorship. I do have to wonder if Sony sees the irony in that. I mean, probably not, because that would suggest that Sony actually cares. And you guys know I play 80%, maybe more, of my games on PlayStation 5, and I really like Sony's consoles, but this kind of censorship is ridiculous. It doesn't even make sense from a logical standpoint. I suppose we'll have to save this argument for another day. The important thing is this version of Double Peace is not censored in any way on the Switch. And so with that said, what is Galgun Double Peace all about? Well, it's an on-rail shooter with some light dating sim and RPG elements. You play as a young boy named Hodai Kudoki, who attends a fictional school in Japan called Sakurachi Academy. One day on his way to school, a Cupid angel accidentally hits him with a powerful Cupid arrow that contains 32 times the normal dose. This creates a situation where every girl in the school is literally running towards him and suddenly trying to be his girlfriend. Kinda reminds me of those old Lynx body spray adverts. Mind you, that it didn't work for me no matter how much of it I put on. But anyway, due to the 32 times strength arrow Hodai was hit with, he now needs to find his true love amongst all of these girls before sundown at the end of the day, or he'll spend the rest of his life alone. You'll have a choice of female characters that you can go after, and this leads to branching paths and multiple endings. The gameplay itself is, as I said earlier, an on-rails shooter. You don't have any control over the actual character's movement, but you have full control over the sight or reticle that you can see on screen. By using the zoom function, you can actually see through certain objects and discover secret items or hidden girls waiting to pounce. Throughout the game, you'll be using a power known as the pheromone shot to keep the girls at bay. Usually, you only take damage if a girl gets too close to you or shouts at you from a distance. Your HP, powers, and stats can be improved at the in-game shop by spending this game's currency known as golden feathers on specific items. When you move the sight over the various girls in the game, you'll sometimes notice Japanese text that appears when you look at their face, chest, hips, or legs. This is essentially showing you their weak spot, and it'll only take a single pheromone shot in that location to subdue them. You'll also notice there's a heart gauge with a number in it located at the top left of the screen. As long as this heart has at least the number 1 in it, you can activate Doki Doki mode. You fill this gauge by defeating the girls during the level, and if you manage to get this to its maximum of 3, you can activate Doki Doki mode on 3 girls at the same time. During the Doki Doki mode itself, you basically need to touch all over the character models to find where they like it most. When you find the correct area, keep touching it to increase that girl's gauge on the left. When the timer runs out, the Doki Doki mode will end, and the girls who were part of it will release a pink shockwave that subdues all nearby girls as well. There's also a few sections that usually involve the main characters where you'll need to follow the on-screen instructions to touch the girls in specific ways. On the PS4 it used to be mapped to the touchpad, but on the Switch you'll need to hold down the right trigger and use the analog sticks to achieve the same results. Outside of the gameplay, there's a couple of sections where you can view a gallery of unlocked images, essentially dress up the characters with unlocked items, and view all of the different girls' profiles. There's even a "Mum's Arrived" panic button that you can press if someone walks into the room and you don't want them to see that you're playing this specific game. This is absolutely not a joke, by the way. You can activate it by pressing the minus button on the Switch, and it gives you a fake retro RPG overlay, which is frankly a stroke of genius, no pun intended. The very last thing I want to mention is that the Nintendo Switch version features an exclusive opening video, but the rest of the game is unchanged aside from some graphical and performance downgrades. So what do I think of the game? Well, as I said earlier, I really do love this series. It's just some stupid fun and I don't take it too seriously. I know there's some people out there that say, oh, it's inappropriate or it should be censored, but I just don't see the logic in that. Believe me when I say I genuinely don't understand it. I mean, are you going to censor every spicy scene in a movie? No, of course you're not. So why do it in these games? Now, I know this game itself has not been censored, which is great, but it does seem to be happening more and more in the industry. And I think what happens is that these kind of games become a convenient scapegoat for people who need something to blame for whatever nonsense they currently believe. My opinion is that people who say this kind of thing are simply out of touch. They see some sort of animated naughtiness and they instantly think, this is a cartoon, cartoons are for children, therefore this game is aimed at kids. I mean, it's flawed thinking from the very start. These games are, for the most part, accurately rated. If you're a parent and you buy this game for your 8-year-old daughter without doing your research, that's on you, my friend. Instead of taking responsibility for their lack of parenting skills, they blame the game itself for existing and want it censored. Censorship, to me, comes from idiots who are looking for something to blame and from those who don't understand something and are unwilling to learn about it. And look, I'm sorry to go on a mini rant like that, but it really just bothers me when people who don't understand what they're talking about ruin things for other people. But anyway, let's move on. As for the game itself, it has undergone a bit of a downgrade. As far as I'm aware, the PS4 version runs at 60 FPS, while the Switch version runs at 30 FPS with a noticeable decrease in resolution. I think it's very noticeable here in the dressing room section. You can see how jagged the edges are and just how low res it all is. I'll admit this does look a little bit ugly, however, during the actual stages and story scenes, it looks much better, at least to my eyes. During my time with the game, I also found that it played just fine at a pretty much consistent 30 FPS. I was playing the game in docked mode on my TV with a Pro controller, and to me, it looked pretty good, although I quickly tested it in handheld mode and the visuals look considerably better and sharper on the 720p Switch screen. And I suppose that's pretty much normal when you compare the Switch screen to a large TV, just due to the size difference. I think the PS4 or PC versions of the game are definitely the best in terms of visuals and performance, but there's something to be said for having it on a handheld system. And of course, if you only own a Switch, then this is your chance to pick up the game for the first time. I'd also urge you to support Nintendo's practice of not censoring content, unlike Sony. I do understand that this specific game wasn't actually censored on the PS4, but it was released a good amount of time before they went down that route, so it is what it is. The most recent release, Galgun Returns, didn't release on a Sony platform at all, and I'd say that game was a little bit tamer than the one that we're talking about today. They obviously didn't want to go back and, retroactively censor games like Double Peace, but I have no doubt that it wouldn't fly today. Another good thing about the Switch release is that now all 3 Galgun games are available on the one console and all physically, which is kinda nice. There's even a collector's edition that includes all 3 physical games called the Horny Trinity Edition, which is absolutely fantastic. In terms of the gameplay, I generally like it. I mean, it's very basic, but it does what it needs to do. You just aim the sight and shoot. But I will say, some targets can be a little bit frustrating to hit using an analog stick. I don't know if it's just me, but I found it very hard to get pinpoint accuracy using a standard controller on any console, and I would imagine that the easiest control method for this game would be a keyboard and mouse on the PC version, although having said that, I've never actually tried it myself. The writing in the story is kinda silly, but it moves the story along and it's definitely good for a few laughs. I think the main female characters are nicely designed and really cute, especially Maya, who is absolutely best girl in my opinion. In fact, I've had her picture as my PSN avatar for quite a few years now. Overall, despite the obvious and of course necessary downgrades to get it to run properly on the Switch, I think the game holds up and it's still just as enjoyable as ever. In my opinion, Galgun Double Peace on the Switch is the missing piece of the puzzle. If you're a fan of the series, you can finally add this game to the trilogy and have all 3 games in your collection on the Switch at the same time. While it may not technically be the best version of the game, it's still absolutely worth owning on a handheld console, and it's still a fun little rail shooter with a wonderful and generous dose of fan service. Ultimately, if you're a fan, you probably need no convincing. However, let's say you're someone who looked up the game, found this video by chance, and you're completely new to the series. Well, let me say from me to you that this is one of those games where you need to temper your expectations and just accept it for what it is. It's not a huge AAA game, it's not got a massive budget, it's for a very specific audience. And to be completely honest, if you've looked this game up because you think you might be interested in it, then you're probably already part of that audience. If you enjoyed the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing, and if you like what I do and want to help support the channel, please check out the first link in the video description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.